You're never going to get closure from someone who lacks the self-awareness to give it to you. And waiting for it is keeping you stuck. Here's what actually gives you closure, and it has nothing to do with them.
How does one get closure when the other person in question is not reachable? They've ghosted, they've passed on, it's a breakup, anything of that sort. We have the Two of Cups in reverse, which is normally a sweet and somewhat juvenile romance or other such partnership between people with shared emotions and desires. So in the reverse, that's the two of them splitting up. We have the Three of Cups, which is a card about the coming together of basically friends and allies for healing and nostalgia and just that sort of social engagement. And we have the Nine of Pentacles, which in this deck is about letting go of the past in order to make way for that 10th pentacle, that a little bit of room needs to be made. Okay, so what does this have to do with getting closure? We have the Four of Cups, which in this deck is about a social group that has recently or is starting to fall apart, and the signs are just starting to show. But it's an emotional dissatisfaction. All right, I still don't see what this has to do with closure and how one gets closure in these circumstances. Oop. We have the Eight of Swords, which for me is a self-imprisonment that is actually false in nature. In the traditional Rider-Waite, she's blindfolded and not actually bound, and if she removed the blindfold, she could actually get out of her situation, but she is bound by that blindfold, not by actual bindings. Okay. So we already know that dealing with the separation is hard enough, especially if it's someone that has been instrumental in your life, a romantic partner or a best friend or those sorts of deep relationships. So the separation alone is hard enough. And that's part of what the problem is here, is that they don't know how to deal with it any better than the way they did. So if they're ghosting you, or refusing to answer your questions or things of that nature, then odds are they have some work they need to do, and that's not going to be your problem right now. You don't need to worry about their closure. You just want to get yours. So, however, their way of attempting to get closure is doing exactly what they did to you. You thought everything was fine. You thought everything was progressing, you know, maybe not in quite the way you were hoping, but, still forward movement. You didn't see that they weren't feeling the same way. that for whatever reason, if there were any signs that they were dissatisfied, you weren't seeing them. We're just going to leave that. There are other readings to get into that. And so when they leave, you are left with confusion. This is the Queen of Cups in reverse. I don't know if we went over that. But you're left with confusion, emotional chaos, and a feeling of being bound. But again, the secret here is that she's not actually bound. She's just focused on the wrong part. And there is a need to shed all of that, but you can't. You don't know how to let go of the past without figuring out exactly what happened. All you know is that there's a void and you don't know how to fill it. And it's not one that should have been there in the first place because, again, near as you could tell, everything was fine. So this random void is even more confusing, even more frustrating. Let's go ahead and shuffle these up. All right. So, Spirit, what advice do you have for them? What does someone do when they're in that position and they're not going to be able to get their answers from the other person? Oh, okay. That is the Nine of Wands in reverse, which for the context of this reading is going to be the answer we all hate of you need to let it go. I hate being told that. It's actually kind of a consistent theme of my life, but apparently that's going to be the answer, so we'll get there. We have the Eight of Cups in reverse, which in this deck, the Eight of Cups is about ignoring warning signs, but it's in reverse. What else, Spirit? What other guidance? Okay. We have the Ten of Pentacles, the Eight of Swords in reverse, and the Chariot in reverse. So first and foremost, your happily ever after, is still very much possible without that person. Their path, for whatever reason, is separate from yours now, and it just is what it is. For what it's worth, just on the back end, the universe doesn't do this out of nowhere. There's a reason, and more often than not, someone picked out kind of to take their place when you're ready. Emphasis on when you're ready. So anyway, so your happiness is still possible even without that person. You just need to see how. You need to focus on that happily ever after, not on what went wrong here. You need to stop trying to control the chaos. Stop trying to understand the way someone else's brain works, especially if that person was never really vulnerable with you to begin with, then you really don't know what's going on in their head. So you need to stop wondering and trying to, not wondering, but you need to stop trying to solve the great mystery of what happened here. Because the only person who can tell you that is the other person. And if they're not going to be able to tell you, then unfortunately, that's something you have to just accept. Just like you would accept that, okay, it's raining today. You can't do anything about it, but you can, plan accordingly for it. And you can make adjustments around it, even if you're going one step at a time. Free will is much the same way. It's always going to be chaos and fluid and ever rippling. You cannot control what others do with their free will. You just can't. Honestly, you can barely control what you do with your own free will, I say from experience. And unfortunately, part of free will is that if they want to just abruptly end things, they can. That is their choice. There will be consequences for them, whether they see it now or later. There's work they're going to have to do on themselves, but that's not your problem. Your problem is your work and what you need to focus on. So, the mantra I personally use when this happens to me is, I don't understand what happened, and I'm not going to, and that's okay. It doesn't mean I can't find happiness. So, steal that mantra, that affirmation, make it into whatever works for you. And every time you start getting into a spiral, trying to understand it, just repeat that mantra until your brain is ready to move on to the next thing. I'm not saying let it go. I'm not saying forget about it. I'm not saying deal with it. It's a coping mechanism that helps me out personally to just repeat mantras until my brain can detach from it. And then when you're able, think about your 10 of Pentacles here. Your perfect person, your perfect outcome, whatever it was that got interrupted here, just, okay, this person is no longer part of it. How do I get there anyway? What do I do now? How do I accomplish this alone? Because if you can accomplish it alone, you'll find that there are going to be people who are led to you to join this path because it's also part of their path. So, also, if you can make a plan on how to do it alone, then the other people who come in and out of the story of your life are not going to be nearly as devastating when and if they leave. Because they're not a crucial part of your process, they're not a crucial part of your outcome. That's all on you. You have your own future to think about, just like they have theirs. You are strong and capable. You don't actually need anybody else. I mean, I know as humans, we're social creatures and we need each other. Please don't isolate to the point of detriment. But, you also have a very active spirit team. And they tend to like it when they interact as friends with their charges. Just having a conversation, if you're going to have some wine, pour a glass for your spirit team and invite them to sit with you and just talk out loud and see what happens. You might just find that it's a lot easier to get messages from your spirit team when you are actively keeping that line of communication open. And that also will help answer a lot of this mess over here that you really can't control it and you really can't avoid it. This is just part of being human. Half of humans do this, where they ghost for whatever reason, or They pick fights over something that's completely unrelated for whatever reason. And again, different reading for different time. But anyway, but you don't need that to heal yourself. And if you focus on your own healing, the rest of this will fall into place, you know. But again, life is fluid because of that pesky free will thing. Any other final guidance, Spirit? We have the Emperor in reverse. And Justice in reverse. All right. So life isn't fair. We all know this. It's cliche, but it's also accurate. There is no Lady of the Lake waiting to give you your Excalibur. Excalibur is still there. You just need to go grab it yourself. You don't need another person to be your guiding light. And in fact, if you rely on other people to be that guiding light, odds are they're going to have you mold yourself into their path instead of pursuing one that's actually good for you. Because more often than not, while our paths do overlap and cross, they are still very individual and very personal to each of us. So even the people who have been in my life for as long as I can remember, they're doing their own thing and I'm doing my own thing, but we're still connected. But they don't need me to manifest their stuff and I don't need them to manifest mine. But I do need them for, you know, friend stuff, that sort of thing. So anyway, you need to have more faith in yourself and accept that people do shitty things for shitty reasons and they will not be able to communicate why because they don't even know. They have their own work that they got to do. And if you continue to focus on their work and what they need to do, then you won't be able to do your work and what you need to do to get that 10 of Pentacles, because that is the goal. And again, you don't need someone else to get there as much as it would be nice. And as much as it will be nice when someone does come in to help you, but you need to be focused on your own vision and not taking anybody else's advice too seriously. Do it the way you want to do it, and the right people will be attracted into it. So, again, when you get in the spiral, you know, repeat the mantra and try to focus on something unrelated to them, but you're happily ever after and how you can get it alone, even though it's unlikely you'll be alone in the end. You just need to make a plan just in case. And that's all I've got. So I will see y'all in the next one.